I think for better or for worse, on the CPAC stage, just judging from the audience response, as weird and awkward as some of these moments were, it seemed like it played pretty well in the room. And he is a rock star in kind of activist conservative circles. He's probably the most important surrogate for Donald Trump besides Donald Trump. I think there is a serious component here, both in terms of what Musk is actually doing. I mean, people are being affected in huge ways right now by these DOGE cuts, and civil servants are in a state of, I think, from their point of view, crisis. And also, of course, there's potential for Musk to benefit from this stuff. Just recently seeing reports that the Justice Department lawsuit against SpaceX looks like it might be dropped. This is involving employing alleged discrimination. There are lots of ways that he can use this shtick to drive profits. And that's kind of what makes it so interesting, is that on one hand, it seems totally unserious. I mean, he's on stage, he's got the chain. He can't hear what he's saying, partly because he seems to have trouble finding his words at times, but also because the chain is rattling against the microphone. And yet he's doing all kinds of stuff. So again, it's both serious and unserious at the same time, I'd say.
Well, so you said a couple of things there referring to his, I guess, erratic behavior, we'll call it. He was having trouble stringing words together in a couple of moments last evening. That might just have been the mood he was in. Look, he's not a public speaker by trade. He's not Donald Trump. But there have been questions about his sobriety, about his mental state. Can you weigh in on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I have no idea what was going on in between his ears during that appearance. I'll say, look, Elon Musk, as you said, is an unconventional guy. He's somebody who has publicly talked about his drug use. He famously smoked, took a hit of a joint on the Joe Rogan podcast years ago, and has talked about ketamine use for depression. He also talks about his own kind of mental health challenges all the time. And I believe even during this appearance, it came up briefly, talking about his mind being a storm. And so look, like he's unconventional, and he's in some ways transparent, at least compared to like a typical political figure. And that's part of the appeal, I think.
So he's got actual other jobs. He runs some pretty important companies, including a massive government contractor. And of course, Tesla. We can get into Twitter and all the rest here, but his actions in Washington are impacting some consumer behavior. And I wonder if you see this becoming a detriment, for instance, to people who think it's a political statement to drive a Tesla.
Well, yeah, we're seeing that already. And I mean, it's hard to know exactly how much politics is hurting Tesla's sales. Tesla was growing very quickly for a long time. Growth has slowed dramatically. The EV industry has also had, bumps in the road and so on. But it really does seem like in the US and Europe, where a lot of Tesla sales come from, the sales are slowing down. And that slowdown has coincided with Musk's political profile raising. I also think there are potential political costs. We're starting to see just the beginnings of blowback on the right to some of this stuff. Now, you're not going to see this at CPAC. You're talking about, dyed-in-the-wool activists, people who really like Elon Musk. Yeah, but, right. Reports in the front page story in the Washington Post about cabinet officials kind of privately grumbling. Politico did a story about some Congress people sort of worrying. Each of these cuts has impact and will have political costs. Bloomberg has a story today about how one of Musk's DOGE employees who resigned after these eugenics reports that he had expressed support for eugenics, he's back and he's inside the Social Security Administration, right? Social Security affects a lot of people. There's a good chance this is not going to be super popular when we get to the midterm.
Yeah, wow. All right. Tell me about his day-to-day to the extent that we know. Is he sleeping on the floor like he was at Twitter? Does he have some kind of a a penthouse pad he's living in Washington? Does he fly back and forth to Texas? I don't understand how he does all of this stuff. How's he spinning all these plates at once?
Well, I mean, he's done this kind of thing for years where he will focus in on one thing. So when Tesla was preparing to release the Model 3, that was its affordable sedan back in 2018, he claimed to be sleeping at the factory. When he took over X, he claimed to be sleeping at the X office, right? And he seems to sort of push everything aside. And right now, as you say, it's DOGE. He has said that he is sleeping at the Eisenhower Executive Office building. I think Musk has a tendency to kind of play this stuff up. Like, it would not surprise me if he also had a hotel room or whatever.
Right.
But he really is. I mean, he is spending a lot of time on this. And, of course, spending a ton of time just staying on Twitter and posting. I mean, you look at the schedule, it boggles the normal mind. I mean, it's he's posting essentially nearly 24/7. So you got to ask yourself, like, when is this guy sleeping? And how is this going to affect his other companies?